12 months. I've been waiting for 12 months since the technical test to finally experience this peak video game, Arknights Endfield Beta. For the last 4 weeks, Enfield is the only game I've been playing. That and Rainbow Six Siege. Pepe was inconveniently released in global, but I have to put that aside to focus on exploring Talos 2. In this video, I will share my beta test experience, focusing on the story, combat, and base management parts of the game, and what Griffline nailed and what needs to be improved. You don't need to have prior knowledge of Arknights in order to enjoy the Enfield story. There are some references to Arknights, but they don't get in the way of the story, and most of them can be found in the backgrounds in the form of notes. The story is honestly mid. Don't get me wrong, there are exciting moments, but it lacks some elements that keeps you being invested in it. Your main objective was to recover your sarcophagus to restore your memories, which kinda gets sidelined, and the payoff feels lacking. That's the spoiler-free version. And in order for me to talk in more detail, I will have to get into spoiler territory, so spoiler alert. You play as the Administrator, transported in a sarcophagus aboard a B-2 bomber-looking aircraft that got shot down. Seriously, whose idea was it to transport a sarcophagus like this? This is awful. This is a terrible job. Your body was recovered to the OMV Dijang, the mothership, and you wake up with amnesia. So, your main goal was to recover the sarcophagus to restore your memory. The prologue scene was a great hook, an absolute cinematic masterpiece that sets the mood of the story. Everywhere you look, this scene is just wallpaper worthy. Seeing a Patriot statue was really nice as well, and a great way to excite some OG Arknights fans. The build up to the boss fights were great though. When Rogdan shows up, he's trying to be intimidating with his huge pipes and loud screams, but you know he's not that dangerous. When you walk into the domain of the Triagolos, you feel unease and something is not right, until this giant three-pronged creature pops up and you know shit is about to go down. The marble Agalamorais. Why is this so hard? The marble Agalamorais design is so ridiculous, it feels like a final boss fight in all of Enfield. When I first fought it, it was really hard, but man, the design of this boss is really nice. There were moments where I felt like certain dialogues were unnecessary, and on top of that, the sarcophagus barely had any influence on the story once you landed in Talos 2. Hell, I even forgot that was the main reason we landed in the first place. It was brought up again after the final boss fight where we finally met up with Angelina, who kept it safe for us. Well, it turns out the sarcophagus was completely useless because it did not restore our memories. What a waste of time! Again, this is just the beta. It might be changed for the full release, and that is my current opinion of the story. Enfield's beta test combat is fast-paced and more streamlined compared to the technical tests. Operators chain attacks into a final strike that builds SP and stagger. When enemies are staggered, you beat the living shit out of them to generate more SP, which is used to cast an operator's battle skill to build up their ultimate. Additionally, combo skills also build your operator's ult, which triggers when a certain condition is met. Combos are the heart of Enfield combat, and it's one of the game's strengths. Using them to your advantage is key to fighting enemies effectively. Therefore, operator synergy is crucial when building your team. But how do you build a team with good operator synergy? You can take a look at what type of damage they deal. There are two types of damage. Physical, which weakens the enemies for crowd control. These include knockbacks, knockdowns, and lift. And the second type of damage is arts, which includes cryo, heat, electric, and nature. When any of the arts damage is applied, it's called arts infliction. If you apply the same arts damage twice, that's known as arts burst. When you mix two different arts damages, you create art reactions. The type of arts reactions depend on which element comes second. For example, to trigger combustion, you inflict any arts infliction on the enemy, followed by heat damage. The combat overall is great. Chaining multiple combos has never been so satisfying. The amount of visual and audio feedback is just enough to give you that feel-good moment when you complete multiple combos. It gets chaotic at times, and I like it. The skills and ultimates are bound to the number keys 1 through 4. Some people find this a bit odd, and I see where they're coming from. Numbers 1 and 4 are quite far away from the WASD keys, so when pressing those keys, your entire hand moves. It took me a bit of time to get used to it. When using the skills, your teammates attack enemies you're currently targeting. Because of this, sometimes you have operators fighting enemies on the other side of the arena, suddenly teleporting to your location. It's not an issue, but it's kinda funny to see. The ultimate animations are short, quick, and most importantly, do not stop your momentum in the fight. Those were the great things about the combat mechanics. Here are several issues I have with them. First, the SP bar takes about 5 business days to charge up just 1/3 of the weight. In high-level battles, it becomes quite noticeable because I tend to use my skills a lot more often. So, during the downtime, it became a series of left-click mashing or running around waiting for the SP bar to recharge. The second issue is the weird dodge mechanic. Enemies sometimes have small red flashes that appear right before their attacks connect. If you time the dodge correctly, there's a blue flash on the operator. It's a bit hard to see in the middle of a chaotic battle. The problem here is that the red flash is not a great indicator to time your dodge because it feels inconsistent. You're better off watching the attack closely and making your own judgment. Dodging perfectly doesn't give you any benefits as well. Some players might love the thrill of it, but without an incentive, there is no reason to get close and personal. I hope Griffline changed this for the official release by making dodging a little more exciting and rewarding. For example, a perfect dodge could give you an SP boost or does not consume your sprint bar. One last gripe I have with the dodge mechanic is that it resets your attack chain, which affects operators that rely on final strikes to trigger their combo skills. I'm 50-50 on this. On one hand, it emphasizes operator positioning and forces you to make split-second decisions to commit to the attack and tank the hit or dodge it. On the other hand, it gets annoying and triggering your combo becomes a lot more difficult, especially operators with long attack chains. So overall, the combat system is great and it's really fun. Being able to pull off combos is the best part of Enfield's combat, but there are some things that needs to be tweaked more. What's worse than gambling addiction? Base management. This is the main selling point of Enfield. When you're not fighting pipe faces and living rocks, you're staring at graphs and your base from top-down view. One thing that you need to keep in mind is that the base, also known as the AIC, is your most valuable assistant. Sure, it may not have the body of a cute anime girl, but wherever you go in Talos 2, the AIC is always by your side. Need to venture into the wilderness and need power? Relay tower. Tired of walking? Zipline. Need to get stronger? Gears. Do you always lose against enemies that are inferior to you? Don't worry, just build a battery of turrets and let them do the work for you. Show them the true power of Enfield Industries. I understand that some people might not want to bother themselves with managing the base, because it does take a lot of time to build the base to the point where you can just leave it to its own devices. But no need to worry because the game handholds you on the basics of base building in Enfield. I also found this guide on the Longman Dragons website by TackticalBreakfast that explains in more detail about Enfield base building and how to set up complex production lines. I'll have the link in the description so you can go check it out for future references. That said, as I reached late game in the beta test, the base became a lot more important and the outposts became more demanding. I found myself spending more time managing my base than actually fighting enemies. This is not a complaint, I'm just curious how much players will dedicate their time managing their bases versus doing other activities in the game. I spent an entire evening rebuilding my base for the 20th time and that was not healthy. Anyway, you will also spend a good chunk of your time placing relay towers across the map. I actually like this mechanic, adding a bit of realism, and it feels like a series of mini puzzles on its own, trying to find the best way to connect your relay towers to each other. Apart from the core PAC, you also get sub-PACs, which are your outposts. While smaller in size, its usage is very flexible and acts as an extension to the main base. I did a video touring around my AIC facilities, but my base looks different now. The Valley Pass and Urgenium Science Park outposts provide high-capacity batteries, the power plateau produces Citrum lunchboxes, while the main base in the hub produces bug capsules A and a shit ton of plants. In my opinion, the hardest part of base management is playing Tetris with your facilities to maximize every tile and output. There are a few things that Griffline can improve. First, the ability to upgrade the belt speed. Currently, it only sits at 30 items per minute. A belt speed upgrade will allow us to increase the yield of a certain product without having to build an entirely new production line. And similarly, a faster belt speed will open up more compact design. My second suggestion is blueprints that we can use to share our base build, copy others, or our own designs. My third suggestion, if Griffline wants to add more complexity, is to add verticality. Let us build upwards with multiple stories for even more production lines. And surely that's gonna be really messy in the game, but there's more space. Finally, we need a better way to generate power. Thermal banks were great early game, but they become very inefficient and take up a lot of space as your base expands. Wooling Outskirts has rivers and reservoirs that we can take advantage of with hydropower generators. And as more regions are added in the future, I hope Griffline will add wind power, solar power, basically many more ways to generate power for the base. There were a lot of debates on the Gacha system, primarily on the existence of the weapon banners and the 120 pity that occurs only once. I'm not gonna judge whether it's good or bad because it's still a beta, but what I like about Enfield's Gacha system is that the weapon banner and the operator banner do not share the same pull currency. Pulling on the operator banner gives you currency to pull on the weapon banner. This is good because even if you don't get a 6-star operators, at least you gain something other than duplicates. The 120 pull guarantee does not carry over to the next banner, and I don't have a problem with it because I see it as a new clean slate to start over. I never go for multiple copies of 6-star operators because potentials don't make operators game breaking and they only have minor effects on them. If you hypothetically decided to not pull for any 6 stars, the 4 stars and the 5 stars operators are just as good. At least that's what I've seen in the beta test. Finally, the gacha animation looks epic. It gives me Helldiver vibes. Please Griffline, do not change it, or at least don't make it shit. This is my number one concern, because if I can't play Enfield, I might as well lock myself in the closet and cry for 3 weeks. Anyway, I'm playing Enfield on a gaming laptop, specifically the HP Victus 15 with AMD 6500 graphics card and the AMD 5600H CPU with a 16GB of memory. Surprisingly, the game runs very smoothly, even on high settings, hovering about 50 to 60 FPS. I'm glad to know that the game is well optimized and no expensive gaming rig is required. Unfortunately, OBS tanked the performance quite a lot by about half. This is mostly because my graphics card does not have an encoder, so the CPU has to do the encoding and running the game at the same time. I did experience a few crashes, although rare. I hope Griffline could flesh out the game more in the future. Overall, Arknights Endfield is very solid when it comes to gameplay. I love the base building, I love the combat, and I really like the inclusion of the integrated strategy style mode as well. That said, the story still needs work. While the prologue sets the tone with a great cinematic opening, the rest of the story feels like a drag. So I hope Griffline gets back to cooking and seriously not rush Enfield to release. I'd rather wait another year than play a broken and uninteresting game. There were speculations that Enfield will release this year in 2025, but then again, it's just a prediction and we'll see it for ourselves when the game is actually fully released. Anyway, what do you think of Enfield so far? And if you're in the beta test, how was your experience? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and I'll see you on the next video. Goodbye!